Hi friends, welcome to the video where we will talk about how to crack your next business system analyst or IT product owner interviews. Anything and everything we talk about is dependent on the amount of effort or investment you are willing to make in your life or career. I can only guide you based on my 15 years of tech experience. But before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So, agenda of this video is to equip you with the knowledge and few tips which can help you if you are planning to appear in a business analyst interview in coming times. You could be an existing BA trying to switch, or you are somebody with a different background and looking to get into business analysis. And I don't blame you because it's a lucrative career, really great pay packages, benefits, work-life balance. So I think it's the right time to get into this because as we get into this, the hype around artificial intelligence and everything, we need more and more people who can bridge the gap between IT and the business. And this is where business system analyst or business analyst, loosely coined term, they come into the picture. And I'm not talking about business analytics here. I'm primarily focusing upon business system analyst or IT product owners who write requirements, manage product backlog, work with different stakeholders to get the requirements done. All right, so that out of the way. So the first thing, or rather the first tip I would say, is to understand the job description. And as a business analyst, you must know the importance of requirements, isn't it? So unless you understand the requirement, the job requirement, you cannot be sure how to approach that. Remember, every company is slightly different. I won't say that you have to be very specific, but there are certain nuances which are always going to take you a long way if you understood them better. For example, if I just talk about this job. So if you look at this as AVP with Deutsche Bank based out of Bangalore. So here if you look at the role description, it says that you are going to participate in change initiative projects and you are going to design a target operating model on business processes, and then rest of the details around how you should contribute to governance and the improvements. Now, what does this tells us? It is telling us that you are going to be a business analyst as part of a IT working for a bank, which means if you understand this core concept, you can improvise. So let's say you are having a banking background, then you are very well placed for this position. But even if you are not, it will help you a lot if you did some research before appearing in this interview. If you understood the challenges which a typical banking operations experiences, which shouldn't be a very difficult task because we all deal with banks as a customer. So just try to remember when was the last time you went to a bank. Now, of course, everything is online. So we hardly go to bank. I don't even remember. I can't remember when was the last time I stepped into a banking branch. But if I try to remember that and just start making notes about it, what was the transaction I was trying to do? Who were the people I was interacting with? What was the workflow, the process flow? That will give me a great insight into what kind of things could be optimized. Fair to assume all banks are targeting these nuances, these operational issues, these challenges, because the objective is same: reduce cost and improve customer experience. You can say the entire global economy is driven by these two factors. So if you understand what does this particular job requires, what is the world in which it operates, you are going to do really well in the interviews because then you take that response or other information and weave it into your responses. So if somebody asks a situational question about the past behavior, you try to weave into those skills which might be required. So even if you're not coming from a banking background, imagine that this process flow. Try to correlate your skills, your experience with that process flow, with that workflow. And then you can use those specific terms like document management, process management, operations, sales, these kind of things. And these small terminologies will have large impact in the interview. Trust me. because then you are sending out a message that you not only know the craft of business analysis, but you're also kind of close to their world. You are kind of home. For example, if you look at this key responsibility area, then you can see it talks about complex process and identify problem. Now, of course, if you are from a banking domain, you can directly correlate to it. But even if you are not from banking domain, you can talk about how you approach a complex problem. How do you identify problem areas? Because that is relevant for this particular job. And then, of course, go through rest of the details and ensure that everything is aligned with your responses. Because unless you understand the job description, it's like you don't even understand what you are getting into. You will come across as kind of amateur if you just go to any interview without proper homework. So you have to ensure that you are thorough with the job description. But that is step one. If you understand the job, you understand the company, its culture, its challenges. But if you don't answer the questions, it won't make any sense, it won't help you. This is where the next step is so important, that you need to be very thorough with your responses, technical as well as non-technical. And technical doesn't mean that SQL query or Python or R. Technical, in case of project management, business analysis, these fields refers to these fields. So for example, if you are a business analyst and somebody talks or rather asks you about user story, then user story is technical knowledge. Non-technical would be your communication skills, leadership, things like that. But for business analysis, your technical skills will be how do you manage your product backlog, how do you write user stories, use case modeling, BPMN, and so on and so forth. And it's a chain. Everything is interlinked with each other. So if the job description talks about identifying business process or challenges around it, then you have to talk about how you create use case diagrams, how you write your user stories where you talk about the user, how do you create user persona. Then you are essentially weaving into the process, or rather highlighting your skills in a way where it is close match with the process. That's what they want. Star L simply refers to situation, task, action, result, and learning. A lot of time people ignore learning, which should not be done. It's a very important. Just to give you some examples of the questions, if you see here, we have this business analysis interview question set. Now, if I just go to free plan, so you'll have bunch of multiple choice questions and situational questions in the free plan. Premium is largely situational questions, very few multiple choice. So let's go through some of these questions here, and that will give you some background, some context. So what is the purpose of user stories in agile development? Now this refers to your technical knowledge, why you are doing it, why are you even writing user stories, right? So what is the answer? To capture user requirements and behaviors. Now it's not as simple as it may sound. If somebody asks you, how do you capture the user requirements and behavior, then your response will be, I write user stories to capture it. Now, here it is talking about a detailed epic, right? So you have to write for a registration journey. And this is a very good example of a question which you must practice. So if I go back to this job, now you can understand that this is related to banking. If you pick something else, I don't know, let's pick this product owner. Again, it's JP Morgan, so again a bank. Let's say Zscaler. Now Zscaler is a different kind of cybersecurity kind of company. So they are essentially asking for something around human resource, payroll, benefits, compensation, those things. If you look at this is into media, so same roles and responses, or other responsibilities, but CMS, MarTech, those kind of things. Now imagine all three different players, whether it's media or cybersecurity or a bank or a document management company, they all have one thing in common, which is registration. Doesn't matter what portal or application you access, you have to register, isn't it? So it's a very good question for practice. And this is where you need to highlight your skill. So if you have done the step one, that is to understand the job description, then start practicing. And when you practice, then you'll be confident, because what happens that, let's say somebody asks you to write a epic or a user story, set of user story. I've been in the interviews where we will just randomly ask people to write user stories on anything. Now, depending upon the level, let's say junior or mid-level, we'll simply say write any user story you are comfortable with, which gives them flexibility to use their existing knowledge and skills. But when we are dealing with senior people, then we will give them a specific challenge where they may have to write about something where they don't know much. This is essentially, we are trying to see if they can adapt to the new situation, new projects, new domain. But for junior or mid-level, mostly, can you write a user story for us? Pick any topic or anything you want, but make sure that user story covers or epic covers everything. And this is where it's better if you write something which is relevant. So you have already done the part one, which is job description. Then in your answer, you try to highlight your skills, technical as well as non-technical. Non-technical is how do you communicate, how do you articulate. Technical is how do you write user story. Now you'll find sample answers on the website, but it doesn't mean that you blindly use them. They are for reference. Unless you have written it yourself, you will never be able to truly memorize, internalize the concept. You won't be able to adapt. Of course, if somebody asks you to write a user story on registration, this is definitely going to help you. Or somebody say, write anything you want, it will definitely help you. But if they ask you to write an epic on something else, then you'll get stuck. So that's why practice, not once, not twice, but multiple times. So let's say as of now, you are already in the job market. Now you don't know if you are going to get call from company X or Y. That is beyond your control. But what is in your control? You know the kind of companies or the levels you are targeting. So let's say if you're targeting banking, your responses should cover banking. If you're targeting insurance, you should cover that. Similarly, whatever domain you are trying to capture or cover or target, you should refer to that domain, terminologies, try to get some more information about it. It's better to target specific companies because the domain is huge. But let's say I want to target Adobe, Google, Facebook, Amazon, few specific companies. Then you can use LinkedIn or whatever portal you want. Maybe identify some of the job listing, put them in a Google Sheet or Excel, identify the key skills which are common, and accordingly you practice. And then of course, once you get the call, then you can laser target it. So then you can further narrow it down. So if I know that I'm going to appear for XYZ team, and this is where understanding the job description is so important, because this will provide you information on the specific team. So here, if you refer to Zscaler, it is specifically asking about HRIS, though it's a cybersecurity team. But if you are good at HR, you're home. So make sure whenever you are answering your questions, of course, whenever possible, because if somebody asks what is user story, then you are not going to use a star format. But if they are asking about past behavior, star L format is must. And if you are new to them, don't worry, on all the questions on this portal, you will get response in that format if that is applicable. So if I move on to the next one, now here if you see, it's a very good question for mid or senior level BAs. So it says, how do you handle competing priorities? It's very common, doesn't matter what industry, company you go in. This is one question which will always surface in your interview in one way or other. So they might use a different language, they might phrase it differently, but they are always going to ask you about the situation, because as a BA, you will always encounter it. So this is something, if you're going there without practicing, I don't know. I mean, there's no tip which can help you. So if I submit, you can see that there is a response in this format. So write your format or other response, then compare it and see. It's just a sample response just to help you. So if you have got better response, if your response is more comprehensive, you don't have to revise that. Very good. Go ahead with that. But point is, keep practicing. Okay. So when we talk about any domain, in this case, business analysis, you can divide the entire interviews into these two categories, or other questions into these two categories. So you'll have questions around fundamentals. So you should be very thorough, because trust me, even I have seen interviews where they have asked what is Agile Manifesto or when it was written and things like that, even in a senior level position where you will be focusing more on the practical experience and knowledge instead of theory, but you never know. So that's why for fundamentals, you should be very clear. What is a user story? What is the difference between a user story and use case? Now, it's a trick question. If you are not very thorough with these concepts, a lot of people struggle. You might be comfortable, okay, with this. In an interview, if you randomly ask, especially newbies, what is the difference between a user story and a use case? When do you use them? People struggle. So be very clear with the fundamentals. Industry trend simply refers to things like generative AI. If somebody asks you about generative AI, I'm not talking about ChatGPT. People might ask you about generative AI. I have few videos on that. If you're not sure, just go back and see them. Point is, as a BA, you should know higher level industry trends. So you don't talk about ChatGPT, maybe mention it as an example, but also refer that, okay, generative AI, this is the field, that's how it operates. ChatGPT is a common example, and things like so on and so forth. And then, of course, company and role specific. In terms of your past behavior, success story, you should be very clear. And that's why you need to have confidence. And that's why you need to practice. Because what is the biggest problem? Biggest problem is not lack of experience. Of course, a lot of people who have thorough experience, they are not good with fundamentals. I have seen it happening again and again. So though a lot of time we are focusing on past behavior and these things, we are ignoring the fundamental knowledge, because whether you like it or not, a lot of companies still ask questions very specifically targeted towards fundamentals of the domain. So you have to learn that. But what is the core problem? Core problem is people fumble in the interview. The stress is visible in their voice, in their appearance. I have seen people sweating in the interviews badly because people notice your body language. And why we feel to come across as calmed and relaxed, or why we even fail to show skills which we have. For example, you might be good at communication, but if you are under stress, that is out of the window. You're not going to sound like someone who is good at it. Even if you have good problem solving skills, which is a must have for a business analyst, you won't be able to articulate that. Why? Because you haven't practiced well. So what happens, you come to the interview, somebody asks you a question about something, and there is no structure in it. So you try to cook up a story in the interview itself. How do you manage difficult stakeholders? You try to cook up something where it is everywhere and you're not making any sense, instead of a proper structure or framework like a star N. So if I ask you, can you talk about a situation when you had to handle difficult stakeholders? And then you just start with this framework, talk about the situation. That will give me some context, because remember, I don't have any idea what you have done. So then I can relate to it. Maybe same thing might have happened with me as well, isn't it? So then you can talk about what task you did, or actions, or result, or learning, so on, so forth. And when you have practiced, you are calm, composed, your response is well structured. There's an entire flow, there's a storytelling in it, isn't it? And while you are speaking, your body, your mind knows what kind of situation you are going through. So if you know that, man, I got this answer, this is the right response, oh, well, I have prepared for it, I can easily answer it. So when you are happy inside, your body, your tone, everything will be in line. But if I ask you something you have never heard that before, you're trying to cook up something, but you can't get the right word, right phrase, you are just all over the place, your mind will tell you that I have lost this job, which means panic, anxiety. You're not sure. That's where you will start sweating. Your voice, your body, your posture, everything will change. And even if you are doing better than what you expect, chances are overall you have lost the plot. So that's why practice is so important. So practice for all these points: fundamentals, past behavior. You need to have proper structure, stories for everything. And like I said, for a business analyst position, these skills are really important. So make sure that you are articulating it the way you answer any question. If you are going to appear in a business analyst interview soon, you can reach out to me through LinkedIn or leave your comments here. I will try to answer them. Okay, thank you.